Hey everybody, welcome to Old Westminster Winery. Today I've got a great event and even better wines to tell you about. But first, a quick story. It was this time of year, 7 years ago, that my now wife Casey and I had just eloped, and we were planning a honeymoon to the countryside of France. We rented a car. It was going to be a great road trip throughout many of the great wine regions of the world. One particular stop that we were really excited about was Burgundy, France, and just 10 days before we left, we had failed to schedule a single appointment to taste wines that we were excited about. And thanks to one particular winemaker who reached out and let me know that the reason we were having so much trouble scheduling appointments during our visit was that it was the weekend of the Saint Vincent Festival. So, as it turns out, Saint Vincent is the patron saint of wine. He's quite popular in Burgundy, France, and the last weekend of January, every year for the past century, the people of Burgundy have paid homage to Saint Vincent. Each year, a different village plays host. When we were there, it was the village of Rougeau, and everyone from the town comes together. They decorate their homes, their front yards, their cellars with papier-mâché flowers and other signs of spring, and they welcome all of the people from the surrounding countryside and even around the world to come to their town and to taste wines from special barrels that the winemakers are really excited about and are demonstrative of that particular growing season. And overall, it's a festive event. It's an opportunity in the dead of winter for people to come together, to have a great time, and to think about spring, hence the papier-mâché flowers. So when Casey and I were there, we had just a tremendous time, and at one point we looked at each other and said, this is an event that we need to bring back to Maryland. And so we did. We have been hosting a Saint Vincent Festival here at Old Westminster Winery. It's an opportunity for us to put a Maryland spin on a classic wine event. And this year is no different, to taste delicious wines that are grown here in Maryland and that we think really reflect the best of this state, and we just can't wait to share it with you. So let's go catch up with Lisa and see what wine she's picked for us.
Hey guys, I'm Lisa Hinton, winemaker for Old Westminster Winery. We are here in the cellar at Old Westminster Winery. This is where all of the wine is produced. If this is your first time joining us for Saint Vincent Festival, welcome. We are so excited to have you. If you have joined us before, welcome back. We have 3 new exciting wines that we're going to taste from the comfort of your home this year. Similar to like what we did last year. Over this past winter, I have tasted through all of the barrels that we have in this cellar, and I've curated 3 special barrels that I think are just a really lovely representation of 3 different varieties grown here in Maryland, made in unique ways. So I'm excited to taste along with you. So I'm going to taste them, talk about the production methods, talk about where they were grown, and I hope you'll join me. So the first wine that we have, this is the 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon. Actually, the first 2 wines that we have are fun comparative tasting. So the reason that I poured these 2 unique ones is because they're two different varieties. We have a Cabernet Sauvignon and a Petit Verdot, but both of them are grown on the same hillside in Northwest Maryland. And they are harvested the same year, so they've been aging for the same amount of time and essentially produced in a very similar way. So really the only differences are the two varieties, which is just a really fun, educational, and very practical way to taste, you know, how a Cabernet Sauvignon tastes and then how a Petit Verdot shows in a very different way. So it's just a really educational, fun way to experience these two varieties. So the 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon tastes along with me. So the vintage just means that's the year that these grapes were harvested. This vineyard is about 12 years old. These grapes were grown on Coolridge Vineyard, which is in Hagerstown, Maryland. It's about 40 minutes northwest of here on our home vineyard. When these grapes arrive at the production facility, they are immediately put into cold storage. So we always process the grapes at cooler temperatures. This is in order to preserve the freshness, the acidity, the delicate aromas that are volatile. So if the grapes are warm when they're processed, you lose some of that freshness. So we always chill the grapes down overnight to about 35 degrees. So they're nice and cold when we process them. These particular ones were destemmed. So what that means is that we're pulling the grapes out of the refrigerated truck. Then we are putting them through a destemmer. So we're actually removing each individual berry from its stems. And then we gravity transfer to a tank. So dropping into the top of the tank as to treat the grapes as gently as possible. We're hoping at this point to not damage any of the skins, to not over extract from the seeds, just really treating very delicately. These are fermented in stainless steel with native yeast. And what that means is that it's a stainless steel tank, but native yeast is that we're not inoculating with any lab cultured yeast. We're using yeast that are found in the vineyard, in the environment, in the cellar, on our hands, everywhere that these grapes are coming in contact with, they're absorbing some of the yeast from around, and that's actually what is conducting the fermentation. Fermentation is the process of a yeast converting sugar into alcohol. So the natural progression of a fermentation is the grapes starting with a lot of sugar. They're really sweet and delicious when you first pick them from the vineyard. And then with the conversion, or with the help of the yeast, we're actually converting that sugar into alcohol. So at the end of a fermentation, there will be no more sugar remaining, which is why wine is dry. All three of these are fully dry wines. So after the fermentation is complete, typically for reds, it's about 2 to 3 weeks of skin contact. So the fermentation in the stainless steel, it takes about 3 weeks for the yeast to fully convert that sugar into alcohol. During that time, we're extracting the color, the tannin, the delicious flavor of red wines are all found in the skins. And so we are gently extracting. We take the juice or at some point the wine out of the bottom of the tank, put it back over the top of the tank, and therefore really covering all of the skins in order to really extract all of the delicious flavors that the skins have to offer. After the fermentation is complete, we drain the wine from the skins, we press the skins, take that concentrated wine as well, and then we age it in barrel. So right now, these have been aging in barrel, once used French oak barrels for about 16 months. That's just where we fall here in January of 2020 when we're all tasting these wines. So these were, again, picked in 2020 and have been aging in barrels since then. So this is, being Cabernet Sauvignon, very true to its variety. Here you'll find classic aromas, blackcurrant, baking spices, a little bit of toasted almonds, some vanilla from the impartation of the oak. Classic pairings with this wine are anything on the grill. This is a great steak wine. Peppers, onions, mushrooms, portobello mushrooms on the grill are also a great option with this wine. Or if you're looking for something light and delicious, an aged cheddar is also amazing. So I really hope you enjoy our 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon. Okay, so the next wine that we're going to taste is the 2020 Petit Verdot. As I mentioned at the beginning of the tasting notes, these first two wines are comparative tasting. So this is Petit Verdot from 2020, grown on the same hillside and made in the same production method that we just talked about with the Cabernet Sauvignon. The only difference is the variety. So with Petit Verdot, you'll taste and you'll smell right off the bat that these are two very different wines. Petit Verdot is typically a very concentrated, in classic regions where it's grown, such as Bordeaux, it's typically not found as a single variety or even more than 10% of a blend. Petit Verdot, when it's grown in a cooler climate, like we are here in Maryland, can lend itself to be have a little bit more finesse, not be as bulky and structured while still carrying some of those tannin. It can also have some elegant characteristics. So we actually have made 2 single variety Petit Verdots here from Old Westminster Winery. Because it is delicious, even by itself, even if that's not the classic way that it's made. So here you find very ripe aromas, black cherry, ripe plum. I also get a little bit of an herbal note, like an herbal tea. And typically with Petit Verdot, this is one of the reasons, this herbal character is one of the reasons that it does really well with lamb dishes or any pork dishes that are a little bit leaner meats. But also like feta cheese, anything that's really salty, and it also complements with spice as well. So if you're looking for a wine that's great with a little bit more unique food pairings, this is your go-to. Just a really lovely representation, a really fun side-by-side with the Cabernet Sauvignon. I hope you can taste the differences between the 2 samples, knowing that they've been produced and grown the same way, and the only difference is their variety. So I hope you enjoy the 2020 Petit Verdot. So the last wine that we're going to taste is one that I am very particularly excited about. This is a special barrel. It is the very last barrel of 2019 Malbec that we have here in the cellar. This is grown on South Mountain Vineyard, so a little bit more south from the previous 2 wines that we tried. This is also a 2019. So 2019 was a very great year for growing here in Maryland. Lots of sunshine, cold nights, warm days, lots of ripeness. This Malbec just really shows that it was a great year. It's also been aging for an additional year, so it's had a little bit of extra time in oak barrels for aging. So this one is actually produced in a little bit of a different method than the first 2 wines as well. So this has 20% whole cluster fermentation. And so what that means is when we bring the grapes in from the vineyard, we chill them so they're cold overnight. And then we actually are leaving the stems in the fermentation on about 20% of the clusters. So for 80% of the wine, we're taking the stems out, it's whole berry fermentation, then 20% are going in as a cluster with the stem involved. What this does is it allows for a little bit of tannin impartation from the stems. It has kind of like this woody character and kind of a bitterness, but that can be really desirable if the stems are very ripe. So this is a little bit different. It allows for, during the extraction, for different characters to develop through that fermentation process. I think you can really taste that in this wine, as it definitely has this like toasted walnut, almost a hazelnut. There's a certain charred, almost like a smoked brisket on the palate, and on the aromas, it's lots of violets, plums, just like some really bright, fresh, very clearly delineated aromas and flavors here. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish this glass.